In 2017, a professional sports team called the New South Wales Waratahs, they're a rugby union team, had a really difficult decision to make. They had had an absolutely torrid year. They'd finished at the bottom of the ladder. They'd won just 4 games out of 15, and they were really asking a bunch of questions. This exercise that I'm about to show you is exactly the exercise that that professional sports team went through to have a huge turnaround. The following season, they actually finished only 1 game away from the grand final. So it's a massive turnaround. This process I'm going to show you, it helps get team player buy-in, but it also helps develop self-assessment. Because if you have a look at this poster that I found on the door of the professional sports team's coach, it's about reflection. He who learns but does not think is lost, and he who thinks but does not learn is in great danger. And that's a really cool way of thinking about it. So let me show you what they did. They created a safe space for all of the team to come together. They all came together in the same room, and they actually had an external facilitator. And the reason they did that was that it meant that the coach was now just one of the team members and not the authoritative figure telling everyone what to do. Because what the coach realized was that if he just told them what was wrong, they were never going to really learn and implement. So they went through this process. And this is the process that I use called the buy-in process. It's an extremely good way to finish a season, because what you really want from your players is not just to think about it, but to learn from what they have thought about. So there are 4 quadrants in this matrix. If we have a look here, on one quadrant, what we have is the external, internal layer, right? So what we have here is we're looking at what's going on in the heads of your players internally. What are they internalizing? What are the thoughts that are leading to the actions? And then externally, what are we seeing on the field? Right? So we've got this great axis where we've got, okay, what's happening in our minds and how are we seeing that on the field? That's the first axis. The next axis is the individual and collective axis. So in other words, what's going on in my world, right? In my game, and what's going on at this end in the team. So this is really about the player, and this is really about teamwork. So we look at the 4 quadrants and we go, okay, let's start to put down what's going on. Now, I would recommend that you get people to do this individually and spend a little time on it, and then come together as a team. Now, what the Waratahs did was they actually had a facilitator and people called out things. Now, it took a little while for them to be brave enough to actually be really honest about what was going on. So it's really important that you create an area of trust in this instance. But let's have a look at what we could do. Okay. In this quadrant, what we've got is we've got what's going on internally in the individual, right? They might be worried about their own skill, or they might have some conflict with another player, or they may have some troubles off the court, off the pitch. What's actually going on inside in their head at the individual layer. Now, the next bit is, okay, what are we seeing as an individual externally? How is all this playing out in the game? So if we have a look and we put some ideas around that, then we might say, okay, no resilience. We give up too early. We're not training, not turning up ready to train. And what I want you to do is think about, okay, what is going on inside your players, and how are you seeing that on the field, on the court? Then the next thing we've got to look at is, okay, what about what's going on internally in the team? As a team, do we have sort of a low trust environment? Do we have, some superstars who are getting all the attention? Are we, what's going on inside about the team? What are you actually thinking about your teammates? What are you thinking about the way we work together? What are you thinking about, what's going on internally when it comes to the team? And just as importantly, how are we seeing that on the field, on the pitch? What is this internal stuff happening, and what is it developing on the pitch? So, if you have a low trust, there might be no or low passing ratio, passing completion. There may be, no low communication, right? So that creates confusion if there's no communication. If you've got superstars, well, maybe what we're seeing is the less talented players are just always relying on the superstars, and they're not stepping up. What is that? So your job here is to facilitate the team to put as much out here as possible, and to determine exactly what that means. So really what you're doing here is assessing the season that you just had, so that you can develop for the next season, and you can decide what the next step. Because really, the next step from here is about, all right, if we want to have a different season next year, I guess, what do we stand for, right? What are the things that we need to do to make certain that this doesn't happen, and we need to start putting them into place right now. Not a week before the season starts next year, right now. So once we've got all of this, then we know exactly what we're going to do with it. What I want to do is, I'd really like to show you actually what the Waratahs came up with. Now, this is the individual, collective, internal, external modules that they did, right? So they actually had up here, this is the individual. Let me just put that up there. Individual and collective down here, and then they had external over here and internal over here. But what you'll see, if I zoom in on this a little bit, you'll see that from an individual level and internally, what they're not doing is holding ourselves accountable. They're uncomfortable. They're saying no to themselves. They're blaming. They're worrying too much about needing to be liked. They're not speaking up. Isn't this interesting? They're exhibiting laziness and anxiety, or I know better. Wanting to win, or they're self-managing, like they're not self-managing and leading. So that's internally. How does that actually present itself externally, right? Not calling out the bullshit, challenging each other, holding ourselves back. They need to get their mind out of the way. They need to call out behaviours that, regardless of seniority, they're just not being practical enough. So these are some of the things which are we're really seeing in that team. Now, let's look at the team level. What's going on internally? They're accepting losing. There's a sense of entitlement. They're not speaking up, or they're not urgent enough. They've created silos, and there's a lack of trust and a lack of integrity. People aren't doing what they are saying they're going to do. They're reactive, and we haven't got an agreed identity. How is that appearing on the field? Well, they're turning up unfit. They're not mobile enough. They're lacking physicality. Their defense is not working very well, and they're giving up really easy. They haven't got transparent communications on the field, and they're not seeking feedback. So these are all the things that happen externally when we have a pretty bad season. But out of this, what we developed was a completely new vision for a different kind of season, and we created a language around that. There was a very clear idea of exactly what they're doing, exactly what they stand for, and every team member had buy-in at every level for the next season. This is how you get buy-in, you get true self-assessment, and you get effective action moving forward for the next season. This is the team assessment end of season program.